Good morning. My name is Mark Schneider. I work at Enterprise Learning and I am the Instructional System Designer here. You are the subject matter expert, also known as SME, and assumingly that you want to develop a web-based training or perhaps edit an existing web-based training course. So what we're going to do is discuss how to develop a course, how to make sure that it's easy for you to do this, it makes sense, and also that it's relevant to the learner as well. So the first step is defining your audience. Who is taking the course? So you have people that might be in nursing, you have people that might be in pharmacy, people that might be in the janitorial service or any of a number of occupations at UK Healthcare. Their levels of knowledge will vary significantly. Some people will have a high proficiency of knowledge. Some people might be brand new, and we need to keep this in mind. Also, you have to ask yourself, have they had this content before? Do they have prior knowledge? And even if they have prior knowledge, some people may have worked here 15 years, but procedures may have changed. So you need to keep that in mind when you are describing something to your learner. You should not assume that they have the same level of knowledge you do. You may want to treat everyone, or rather you may want to don't make any assumptions about the learner's knowledge, and go ahead and spell things out. It's better to err on the side of assuming they know too little than assuming they know too much. Also, using appropriate language. You have some people that are clinical and know certain terminology. They may know the Coulter counter and centrifuges and IV drip calcs and all that versus non-clinical. You also have people that have different reading levels. Some people are very proficient in their reading levels, while others might be on the low end of the literacy rate. So it depends who your target audience is, if you're dealing with a wide audience or if you're dealing with a very specific audience. And also, ask yourself, why are they taking this course? Sometimes it's mandatory. So sometimes it's because they themselves are looking for something to enhance their own knowledge. So motivation is an important thing to think about when developing these courses. So starting off, interestingly enough, what you want to do is start off working backward. What is it that you want them to be able to take away from this course? What do you want them to understand? So when they're done with this course, they're going to retain a certain amount of information. You want to know if this is going to make it to clinical practice. So working backwards is a very important step. Next is understanding pedagogy versus andragogy. Pedagogy you find more with public school students, college students, where they have limited life skills, limited work skills, and they're more receptive to things that are not specific to the job at hand. Versus andragogy, where these people are working in specific fields. They are very interested in things that are relative to what they know. They already have some baseline understanding of what they're doing, and they're asking themselves constantly when they're taking this web-based training, how does this pertain to what I do? So you need to be able to differentiate nice to know from need to know, and we need to deal with need to know. For instance, with HIPAA, we might say that HIPAA was founded in the month of so-and-so, in the year of so-and-so. That's nice to know. But as far as being able to do your job, they're not going to remember that. They're not going to retain that information. Another thing that's critical would be objectives. Objectives are very important. You should spend a lot of time thinking about that. There's order and consistency. So when you're developing your objectives, you want to make sure that you have your objectives in a specific order, in linear format, and that you're consistent with your objectives. So when you have, let's say you have 5 objectives. I mean, generally you do not want to have 20 objectives, so maybe you have 3, 5, 7 objectives. Each objective should flow in a logical order, which will make it easy for you as a developer to create the content, and also for the learner to follow and understand what's being presented. Another important thing is that the content you put under each objective should only pertain to that objective. So if you have, for objective 1, if you have something that does not pertain to objective 1, do not put it there. If you cannot find that information, and you have a lot of information, and you do not find any objectives that pertain to that, then perhaps it's time to think about creating another objective. When you're working on your objectives, you can use action words like know how to do this, recall how to do this, recognize this, so that you can say, understand what are the signs of so-and-so, or know how to deal with a hazardous spill. So these are your action words for the objectives you'd be developing. So we're developing the first objective. So now that you've spent all this time creating your objectives and all that, it's very easy now. You just pull the first objective and plug that in to your heading, and you can start developing your content there. So go ahead and develop your content. Make sure it's relevant to that. And then there's something else we want to do. We want to promote cognitive thinking or active learning. We want to make sure this is not a passive exercise where they just go click, 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 and just power through this. So by having, you can have a question, you can have maybe drag and drop, you can have videos, you can have something that what will happen is after you've presented this information, you're then asking them a question about this. Then the learner's like, oh my gosh, they're going to be asking me things about this. I better be paying attention. So this is good for the learner to realize that it's incumbent upon them to understand what's being presented to them. So here are some tips. We already discussed about the language, making sure that, well, you want to make sure you keep it on the same level. You don't want to jump from the 6th grade level to a graduate level. Also, when you're adding images, photos, or videos, only add those if it enhances meaning. There's a cute video of a kitten that's holding onto a bar and it says hang in there. It's cute. Don't use it. Only add things if it enhances meaning. And you can use your cell phone if you want. It's a great thing to use if you want to take pictures, if you want to take videos. So if you do want to have your Coulter counter, your centrifuge, a picture of your lab, your MRI, anything, it really makes a difference when you're using your own equipment in your own lab. People really relate to this, and they're really drawn to this. Also, we want to make sure that we adhere to copyright issues. We do not want to have copyright infringements. So what you can do is, of course, if you're using your cell phone, anything you take, you have full rights to, so there's not a problem there. You could go to CDC and you can grab images from there. Just make sure you have proper attribution. So when you're going ahead and presenting this, that you say, courtesy of CDC. Also, and I should have mentioned it by now, you're going to be presenting this content to me in a PowerPoint. That's just going to be the medium that you're providing to me. I'll actually be using Adobe Captivate to create this, but it's a good vehicle for you to use. If you want, you could go to certain sites that offer free photos. Microsoft has a repository of free photos and sometimes free videos as well. I like to stay away from the graphics. They're a little too cartoony. But don't go ahead and like Google for an image and just say, oh, it's on the website, so it must be good. Just the opposite. Excuse me. We have no idea where they grabbed that from, and we cannot make the assumption, oh, if it's on the internet, it's free for use. That's not true. You can, however, contact people who own certain images or videos and ask permission for its use. That's perfectly acceptable. I do that all the time. The next thing to discuss is information overload. I'm sure you've seen screens where it's so full of information you don't know where to look first. And your first inclination is just click next or to skip to the next page because it's just so overwhelming. So you, as the SME, your job is not to clutter the screen. It adds to confusion and learning will not take place. Don't be afraid of using white space. That does not hurt at all, and it's easier for the learner to follow. You can have bulleted ideas or short paragraphs, and then this is where you can use verbal narration to flesh out those ideas. So you might have something brief. You can go ahead and embellish those ideas, elaborate on those ideas, and it makes it very interesting. In fact, when you're doing the narration, generally you come to my office to do the narration, which is at the Kentucky Clinic, K001, and we have a discussion where you're actually teaching me, and that creates a much more friendly type of web-based training. It doesn't appear very stark. It has a much more approachable tone to it. And also we can make that available for closed captioning with the narration, because I can go ahead and have that digitized, and that's a useful thing also. And then we're also in compliance. So that's a good thing to use. Also, don't be afraid to use examples. It's wonderful to give examples that the learners can relate to. So again, that's another useful tip for engaging the learner. So the second objective, well, you've already created your objective, so you go ahead and take the second objective in your list, plug that down as your title here, and go ahead and create the content for your second objective, making sure you follow the rules that only content that applies to the second objective appears here. And you continue as before, making sure we have some interaction here where you might ask the user a question, make sure they're following, that it requires some action on their part to make sure they're just not nodding off, that they're engaged and actively learning. So the slide should be approximately 20 slides in length. I just give that as an approximation. 20 slides will equate to approximately 30 minutes. If it's much longer than that, you're going to find that your learner is going to probably nod off. What you could do is, if you have something that's very, very long, you could actually break it up into different topics and then have different web-based trainings. If it's general, then make sure you keep it general, and stay away from the specifics. That's, as the SME, it's totally up to you which approach you'd like to take. If you have something that's going to be extremely long, again, you want to go ahead and modularize this so you can make it into separate courses. So this is the old tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. So you could say, after completing this course, you should now understand how to deal with hazardous spills, whatever the case may be. So when I mentioned the number of slides, I was not including the quiz questions. Generally, no more than 5 to 10 questions, pulling from the objectives. Make sure that that the information is coming from content that you have. You don't want them to make deductions on their own. You want to have concrete information they can pull from. As another option, you can also have an attestation where if you just want them to acknowledge that they viewed perhaps a video. Sometimes that's required. That's up to you. Also, there's remediation, and this has been a big change. And again, we mentioned how this type of web-based training is different from the pedagogy. With this type of training, we want to make sure they understand everything. If you understand 80%, well, the 20% you're missing, what if that's life critical? So with remediation, I'm a firm believer in that quizzes are not only another opportunity, but a critical opportunity to ensure learning is taking place, and also another opportunity to learn. So if they miss a quiz question, they're immediately sent back to where that information can be found for that answer. It's not saying, the answer for one is this, but by reading this, they should then be able to understand what the answer is for question number one. Immediately after that, they're sent back to the question. If they get it wrong again, they're sent back to that slide again. So depending, if you have 5 questions, it's going to take them a long time to get through this unless they're paying attention. In most cases, they pretty much will understand the second time around. Something new we're adding is a test out feature. We've tried this and it's worked successfully, and we'll be adding more of this in the future. No bunny questions. Nothing like what color is the sky. You want to show, if you are going to have the test out feature, that they are proficient. They have proficient knowledge in this material. So these questions that you're asking should really be reflective of the content and understanding of the content. If they're able to answer whatever you choose, 5 to 10 questions correctly, then they're given the option of either saying, okay, you can test out, or yes, I've tested out, but I'd still like to go through this web-based training again, and then it'll be at their discretion. Also, very, very important for you as the SME, you need to tell me in your PowerPoint, of course, what the correct answer is for each question, but also what slide I can find the information for that answer. So when I'm developing this for the remediation, I know where to kick them back to for that information. I hope this has been informative. The way that we develop web-based trainings is by you, the SME, of course, understanding this video, downloading a template, developing the content, and then we can go back and forth where you can go ahead and send me your PowerPoint. I can look at it. I might have suggestions. And my email, by the way, is mark1, M-A-R-K-1, at uky.edu. And my phone number is 32764. So there's definitely a process of getting this done. Unfortunately, what you can't do is say, "Oh, I need this web-based training tomorrow," because of all the steps I'll explain. Well, I have explained and will explain. Or you already know what's required to develop this, but there are steps after that. After you've gone ahead and developed your PowerPoint, when it comes to me, if everything looks great, and I'm sure that it will, at that point, I go ahead and I develop this in Captivate, Adobe Captivate, and then I send it back to you as the SME to review, make sure everything looks good to you. After that point, it then goes to a testing server, and I make the request for it to go to a testing server. I have no control over that, and they also have their queues. Just like I have queues of people that are waiting to have web-based trainings done, and people are waiting their turn, for the testing server, people are waiting their turns to have that put up on the testing server. Then I go ahead and test it, make sure it works. If it does work, then I make a request for it to go to the production server. Then I test it on the production server. And if everything checks out fine, then it's ready to go and your learners are able to go ahead and start using it. I can let you know it's available for the testing server, for the production server, and it's good to go. An exception to that might be if we're doing this for the March rollout. For the March rollout, I'll keep these courses hidden until March 1st, when these can be released to the general population. So that's an exception to the rule of just, once it's up on the production server, it's good to go. If you have any questions at all, again, please feel free to contact me. This is a collaboration. We're working together. I strongly believe this is something that we're working on together for the benefit ultimately of the patient, and as well as for UK healthcare staff and personnel. So thank you very much.